Hey guys, Mr. Wiz here. So if you watched the last two videos, you should have already built a chasing game. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at ways to customize our games in various different ways, really. So I really want you guys to take whatever game you've made and make it your own, right? So I'm going to show you a few different ways you can do that, but of course, feel free to get more creative and do your own thing if you want to. So first things first, I always have my students, when we're working on projects, first thing I always have them do is to customize the sprites. Using images straight from the gallery is great for when you're focused on the programming. But of course, if you're making your own game, I would highly suggest you either create your own sprites or customize the ones that you took from the gallery. Remember, any of these things can be customized. So maybe I decide I want to give this guy a green outfit instead of a red outfit. Now he looks more like a Robin Hood type character. That's kind of cool. So you can always do simple customizations like that, or you can create something brand new. Maybe instead of using this ghost, I want to create my own. Maybe I will, let me see if I can draw something. I am not an artist, but just for the sake of this video, let me draw a little ghost here. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Give him some black eyes. Remember, I can change the size of the pencil right there. That actually doesn't look too bad. Little L-shaped eye. All right. I'm going to fix up his shape a little bit on this side. A bit smoother. Yeah, that actually kind of looks like a classic cartoon ghost that you might see in a game. So yeah, so I would always suggest, of course, customizing your sprites, make them unique, make them your own. That way it doesn't look like it just came straight from the gallery, right? So that's one way to customize your game. Of course, there are other ways, things with the names, sound effects, all of that. We've talked about that before. But let's talk about improving the actual gameplay a little bit. So your game doesn't play exactly like mine, right? So what are some ways that you can improve your game? Whenever I give this assignment to my students, I let them kind of go free with it, get creative with it, and make it their own. So let me show you some of the ways that they seem to enjoy the most. One very common thing that students will do is they will have more than one power-up. So some students would like to have one power-up for points and another power-up for health. So to do that, it's simple enough. You would just, of course, create another sprite. I'm going to go through this real quickly here. I will call this the health sprite. And what should I make the health sprite? I'll make it an apple for now. Of course, I can always change it later. And the important thing here is that we can't use the same kind, right? If we do food kind for this, it's going to treat it like a point. It's going to treat it the same as it does the cherry. Since it's going to have different outcomes when I touch it, I don't need it to be the same kind. So the nice thing here is you can always add a new kind. So you can have as many kinds as you want to. So I'm going to call this the health kind. I can't call it the same thing as health because I already have the sprite named health. And if I give it the same name, it's going to give me an error. So now that I have that, I can basically duplicate this. And notice how when I duplicate it, one gets faded out. That's because you can't have the same event twice, right? So when player overlaps, instead of doing food this time, I'm going to do health kind. I could change the sound if I wanted to. I'm not really worried about that right now. And instead of doing a change score by 1, I'm going to do a change life by 1, positive 1, because it's adding in the life, not subtracting it. And then I'm going to use health and reset its position. So now, in my game, I have positive sprites. I have oh, that ghost is fast. I have 2 positive sprites. I have the one for points and the one for health. Now, one negative to this is that it's probably a little too easy for me to get health, if I'm being honest, right? So what if I don't want the health to always be on the screen? What if I want there to be a delay, so it only comes up every so often? I'm going to mute my game there so it doesn't keep blasting. So what if I don't want my health to appear all the time? What could I do? Here's a nice little trick. You can actually make the sprite temporarily invisible, and that will allow you to basically have it off the screen for a while. So down here in the sprite section, where you've got your special effects and all of that, there's these couple blocks here that have on-off switches. So there's the stay in screen, there's the bounce on wall, and then there's this one here that says auto destroy. I want you to notice that one has a drop down because there's actually multiple things there. So I'm going to grab this one. And what I'm going to do is let me clean up my thing. I got too much stuff overlapping. If you ever have a lot of code and you need to clean up your game, you can right click in the empty space and hit format code. And it kind of organizes your code for you. It makes it nice and neat here. So you see how neat this is? Okay, so now I can zoom in on the part that I'm trying to do. So, of course, I need to fix this to say the name of the sprite. There we go. So I'm going to get my point. I'm going to make the sprite invisible. So you'll see there's a lot of things here. Ghost is not the same thing as invisible. So just a heads up on that. If you turn on ghost mode, basically what that does is it makes it so it can't interact with other things. Invisible means it's no longer on the screen, right? So I'm going to, after I get the point, health is going to turn invisible. Then I'm going to create a pause for how long it should stay invisible for before it respawns. So maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds. How long do I want to wait before I can collect another one? Let's just do 1 second for now. Then, after that 1 second is over, invisible will be turned off and it will have a new position. So let's see how that works. Let's test it out. There we go. Okay, it's not bad. I feel like 1 second's not really long enough for what I need, though. It's still coming up pretty quick. So to make my game harder, let's make it last 5 seconds. So the health sprite only appears every 5 seconds instead of every second. All right, not bad. I kind of like that. So I'm focusing on the points, and I only get the health when I can. That keeps me from overusing it, right? Okay, so that's one way that a lot of students like to customize their game is by having more power-ups. Now, this is just one version. Having the health is a pretty easy one. Sometimes I'll have students create a pickup that increases the student's speed, for instance. So you might have a code for when the player overlaps. Just to show you what I mean here, I'll just take this out for a second. So maybe instead of gaining health points, you want to change the speed of the player. So what you could do there is you could grab a move sprite. My sprite is called Pack. And I could give him a speed boost. So maybe instead of 100 and 100, it's 200 and 200. And then I could put a pause in there to decide how long he has the speed boost for. And then go back to the regular 100, 100 after that time is up. And then I could change the sprite to look like maybe a pair of sneakers or something like that, right? So now when I touch the apple, it should boost my speed temporarily. Whoa, look how fast I am. Oh, and it's gone. Right? So there's a lot of things you could do with this idea. You could have multiple power-ups in your game. You can decide how often they spawn or don't spawn, right? So yeah, all that stuff here. I'm going to put it back to the health one for now because I kind of like that idea. It's nice and simple. But get creative with it, right? You can have power-ups doing almost anything you can imagine. Just make sure that when you touch them, they do respawn somewhere else like we did with this health object. And if you want to create a pause, it's really up to you. Do you want them to respawn immediately, or do you want there to be a delay before they respawn? And that's where the invisible and the pauses help a lot. All right, so besides having additional power-ups, another way you might want to change your game is possibly by having multiple enemies. So this is a fun thing that a lot of my students do as well. I want to talk a little bit about this because to do the multiple enemies correctly and to make it work correctly, there's a little bit of a trick to it. So first off, if you're going to have multiple enemies, you're going to need to decide when do you want those enemies to appear. Do you want them to be at the beginning of the game? Do you want them to be later on in the game? For now, I'm going to go ahead and create them at the beginning of the game. So first thing I need to do is I need to give it a different name. So let's create a new variable. I'll call this one Ghost2. And let's also change his appearance so we can tell he's a different ghost. Let's make this ghost orange. So now I've got two ghosts, the one that's called Ghost and the one that's called Ghost 2. I'm going to give him his own follow code. I'm going to give... what else do I need to do here? Honestly, that's probably pretty good for now. Just to keep this a little bit neater, I'm going to move some of this code around. There we go. And just keep the ghost stuff here at the bottom. Once again, it's getting a little disorganized, so let's format this again. There we go. All right. So I've got my two ghosts. Right now, I gave them the same speed, and they're also both spawning in the same position. So maybe I should randomize their ghost positions as well, right? So I should have Ghost, and then, ooh, I never changed the name. This one should say Ghost 2, not Ghost. There we go. And I'll randomize their positions at the beginning of the game. There we go. This thing keeps on getting in the way. All right. So now I've got two ghosts that are both following the pack character, the main character. So let's see how that looks and what happens when we do this. All right, so first thing I'm noticing is as I avoid the two enemies, eventually they kind of merge together. So now it looks like there's only one enemy. There's still two because the one is behind the other one. So how do we keep this from happening? The easiest way to keep that from happening is to give them different speeds, right? So if I have one that has a speed 70, maybe the other one has a speed of 60. This will make it a little bit easier to tell that there's still two ghosts because they're not moving at the exact same speed. Oops, I just ran right into them. Let's try this again. There we go. See how the white one's a little bit faster than the orange one, right? So having them at different speeds is pretty helpful for this type of game. But let's talk about the next problem, though. If I touch one of them, I touched the white ghost, he respawns somewhere else. Great. What if I had touched... goodness, that was too fast. What if I had touched the orange one? Did you guys catch that? What happened when I touched the orange ghost? Let's see if I can do it again. When I touched the orange ghost, he did not respawn somewhere else. If you noticed, the white ghost respawned somewhere else. Let's see if I can do this one more time so you guys can catch it. If I touch the orange ghost, the white ghost is the one that respawned, and the game immediately ended. I didn't get my 3 lives like I'm supposed to. The reason being the orange ghost didn't move, so I was still touching him, and I still lost my lives. So this is where I was saying having multiple enemies in your game can be great, but you do need to make a little adjustment to your code. So they are both enemies, and that's fine. They're both set as enemy kind, and that's fine. My code says when an enemy overlaps the player, set Ghost's position to a random position. Well, they have different names, right? One's called Ghost and one's called Ghost 2. So that's not going to work. Now, you might think, well, just change their name, right? So let's try that. Let's try that. If they had the same name and we let them both be called Ghost, would that fix the problem? Okay, so this time the orange guy did respawn when I touched him. Great. But what happens when I touch the white one? Oh, the white one's not respawning. So now we're having the same problem with a different ghost. All right, so how do we fix this? First off, I'm going to go ahead and put their names back because I like all my sprites to have their own unique names. The problem is not the name. The problem is that we need this code, the enemy overlapping with player, we need it to respawn any ghost, any enemy that touches the player. And we need to make sure it's respawning the character that you're touching. So how do we make sure that happens? Because if we say reset ghost position, it's going to move a sprite that's named Ghost. It might not necessarily move the correct sprite, right? So how do we make sure it is moving the sprite that we are touching? This is where we start using what I refer to as temporary variables. So up here in our overlap code, where it says on sprite of kind enemy overlaps with other sprite of kind player, these two red bubbles here, these are our temporary variables. You cannot use these anywhere in the code except for where they were made. So these are part of the overlap code, so they can be used inside of the overlap code. So what do they mean? On sprite of kind enemy means when the sprite that is the enemy type overlaps with a different sprite that is a player type. So who do we want to respawn? We want the enemy to respawn, specifically this sprite. This red bubble that says sprite represents the enemy. Other sprite represents the player. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag where it says sprite, since that's the enemy kind, and I'm going to replace where it says ghost. So what this means is our code now says when a sprite that is an enemy kind overlaps with another sprite that is a player kind, set that sprite, that first sprite's position. So it doesn't matter which enemy I touch, this code will now work on any enemies that are in my game. In fact, I could have dozens, hundreds of enemies in my game. It'd be a pretty hard game to play, but I could do it, and this code would work on all of them because it doesn't specify the name of the enemy. It just specifies that it's the enemy that's touching. That was the one we're changing. So now when I play my game, I should notice the overlap code works on both of my ghosts. And it absolutely did. Let me get, So if I touch one, he respawns. And if I touch, that was the white one. If I touch the orange one, he will also respawn. It's a little hard to do because they're running into each other still. But yeah, they're both respawning. They're both working. Okay. So with this code in play, all I did was change where it said ghost to grab the one that said sprite. Now here's a common mistake. Let me undo a couple things here. A common mistake that my students will make is they won't drag the word sprite. What they'll do instead is they will create a new variable and call it sprite. Don't do that. Don't do that because you're not creating a variable in this scenario. We're not doing that. We are using the temporary variable. Don't create a new variable. Use the temporary variable. Now, if I wanted something to change about my player, I could do that too here. Maybe I want my player's appearance to change. I could go in here, I could grab set image, and I can grab other sprite to represent the player, right? So maybe his image will change temporarily, and then he'll go back to normal. What would I want his image to change into when he gets touched? I don't know. I haven't thought this far ahead. I'm just coming up with stuff on the spot. Maybe his outfit will change. So he was green. When he gets touched, he turns blue. Ooh, or maybe his face turns blue. Like he got sick or something. I don't know. I don't think I'm supposed to change that part down there. That's his belt. And then I could give him a little pause here. I'm just getting creative. And then I can have it go back to the original picture. All right, let's see how it works. Yep, do you guys see how he flashed blue for a second there? That was kind of cool. So you can get as creative as you want to with these. All right, so that's the main thing that my students have done in the past to customize their game is by changing the power-ups or changing the enemies. Now, let's say you didn't want the enemies to all be at the beginning of the game, though. What if you wanted your enemies to appear at different times in the game? How could you make that happen? So I'm going to take my ghost guy out of the on start, and let's change how this works. Actually, I know what I'll do. I'm going to delete him completely. Goodbye, ghost number 2. And I'm going to take my ghost code here that I had from yesterday, and I'm going to put it inside. If you go to game, there's a block here that says game update every. Game update every means that whenever a certain amount of time passes, this thing happens. This action will occur, right? So I'm going to put a game update every second. Ooh, that seems pretty fast. Let's do every 2 seconds. So the way this will work is every 2 seconds, a new ghost will spawn in my game. Let's see what that looks like. If I can survive, I might need to slow this ghost down. 70 seems too fast. Let's bring it back. 50 was really slow when we did it yesterday, but let's just, for now, leave it at 50. Okay. Goodness gracious. There we go. Did you guys catch that? So as I'm playing, more ghosts are joining the game, which certainly adds a nice challenge. And they're randomly spawning somewhere on the screen because of our randomness block that we're using. Yeah, this is a great challenge. Now, eventually, you're noticing that they're all kind of merging together into one. That does happen because they're all moving the same speed. So let me ask you, think about this for a second. With all the stuff that we've recently learned, is there a way that I could make it so as it spawns a new ghost, they don't all have the same speed? No matter what speed I give them, I don't want it to all be the same. What could I put there instead of a number? Because if I put a number where there's 50, 60, 70, all the ghosts are going to be the same speed. What could I put there that would allow the ghosts to follow at different speeds? I'll give you a hint. There's about 4 versions of the code I'm looking for that are currently in front of my face, looking at me on this screen. I could use a randomness block. So I could go to math, grab a pick random block, put it in here, and now I can pick the range of my speed. Let's say I don't want characters going any faster than 70, because 70 is pretty fast. So let's do 70 as the max. And 50 worked good, but maybe I want some of them to be even slower than 50. Maybe I want to go as low as 30. So now every ghost that spawns will randomly have a speed somewhere between 30 to 70, which will create some randomness and some variety so they're not all moving at the same speed, and they won't get clustered together like that. It will definitely make my game a lot harder. Let's check it out. There we go. So I got one fast... Oh! I got them moving different speeds here. They're all chasing me just to make it interesting and challenging. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can add variety to your game. I've also seen students change the concept of this game a little bit. For instance, maybe the ghost isn't chasing the player. Maybe the ghost is chasing the food item. And then when they get the food item, something bad happens. But if you get the food item, something good happens, right? So that's another way you could play the game. So yeah, get creative with it. Have fun with it. I hope you learned something new in this video. If you learned something new, click that like button for me. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe and make sure you tell your friends and family about this page so they can learn how to play games too. But most importantly today, I want to see the game that you make. So after you've customized your game in whatever ways you decide to customize it, whether it's with power-ups or enemies, or if you came up with something on your own that you think is even more unique than this, please share your games with me. I want to see your chasing game. As always, make sure that you have sound effects, make sure that you give it a nice title with instructions so people know how to play your game, and then share the link with me. So once again, to share the link, it's this button right here. You're going to click on that, name your game. So my game is called Cherry Chaser. Hit that share project, get the link, copy that link, and put it in the comments of this video so that I can play your game and the other people who watch this video can also play your game. If you like someone's game, give it a like. Give them positive feedback if you want to. We only do positive feedback on this channel, so don't say anything mean about someone's game because we're all doing our best to make the best games we can possibly make. So please share your game with me in the comments and like someone else's game if you find it fun to play. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.